Stratford is just another dot on the map. But what I discovered, and what you'll discover in this video, is that a place like Stratford has amazing history and interesting stories to tell. And in Stratford's case, it's the story about a town that has reinvented itself as industry, technology, and the economy has changed over the decades. Today, Stratford is home to the Stratford Festival, which is world-renowned for its excellent live theater. Plus, thanks to the theater industry in Stratford, other industries have blossomed around it. Stratford has a great food scene, and most recently, Stratford has become known as a tech hub, embracing new technology and pilot programs. It's home to the University of Waterloo's Stratford campus, which focuses on technology and design. There's also some great museums and shops, and plenty of outdoor spaces and parks. Honestly, it's worth a trip to Stratford just to walk around, walk through downtown and the amazing parks and gardens and along the river. Stratford is also the hometown of one of the biggest superstars in the world, Justin Bieber. This renowned theatre community in Canada is named after William Shakespeare's hometown of Stratford upon Avon in England. In fact, Stratford, Ontario, like its British counterpart, also sits along the banks of the River Avon. I did a quick Google search of Stratford upon Avon, and there are definitely some similarities between the two towns. No doubt, the river that flows through town reminded the first settlers of Stratford upon Avon back home in England. However, at that time, there was no plans for live theatre in Stratford, Ontario. That would come about 100 years later. But I'll come back to this topic a little later in the video. First, to better understand what Stratford is today, we need to go back to the mid-1800s. When Stratford was first settled in the 1830s, it wasn't too noteworthy. It was a fairly typical town with some pubs, inns, blacksmiths, a shoemaker, a couple doctors, and a grist and sawmill. The community was growing pretty slowly, until the 1850s when the railroad arrived. Due to Stratford's central location in southern Ontario, it became a rail hub, as it provided access to major cities throughout the province, access to the Great Lakes, and the United States. For decades to come, Stratford would enjoy an economic boom thanks to the railway. In the late 1800s, a large steam engine repair yard opened, becoming the major employer for the next several decades. The town grew and flourished and brought hundreds of people to the area looking for steady work. Other industries benefited from this railway boom as well. Stratford developed a furniture industry, which was a direct result of having several railway lines connecting in the town. Today, you can still see lots of reminders of Stratford's railway history. A short walk from downtown is the beautiful railway station. It looks much the same as it did back in the early 1900s, when families looking for work rolled into the station. It still sits right on the edge of town. Even though Stratford is located inland and away from the Great Lakes, standing on the platform of the station felt like I was standing on the docks in a port city. Behind me, a thriving community, thanks in part to the railway, and in front of me, an endless sea of farmers' fields, rolling hills, and forests. One could stand on the platform and watch the railed vessels slowly disappear over the horizon, destined for distant communities and cities across the continent. But the boom years, thanks to the railway, wouldn't last forever. The Great Depression hit everybody hard, and the workers in Stratford who had unionized after the Depression went on a general strike for fair pay in the 1930s. The strike escalated into violent protest when the employers tried to take unfinished product out of the factories to be finished elsewhere. The strikers smashed railway cars and trucks carrying dairy products, released chickens and ducks from the meat processing plant, and locals scrambled to take whatever they could in the siege to feed their families. Looting and rioting worsened, and the mayor of Stratford called in the Canadian military for support. Troops armed with machine guns responded and arrived by train. Upon the arrival of the troops, the riots and strikes cooled down, and thankfully military force was not necessary. Eventually, the unions and employers came to an agreement, and it would be the last time that the Canadian military would be called in to end a strike. But the turmoil didn't end there. World War II was quickly approaching, and the economic and industrial growth that Stratford had enjoyed started to dry up as money was put towards the war effort. After the war, many believed Stratford would get right back to business, but unfortunately, that didn't happen. The railway shops in Stratford were set up to repair steam locomotives, but diesel was quickly becoming the fuel of choice for the rail companies. And instead of converting the existing steam engine repair shops into diesel repair shops, the rail companies simply pulled out. In a short period of time, Stratford saw its employers and industries evaporate, and thousands of people lost their jobs. It was now the 1950s, and the town of Stratford needed to pivot. They had reached a precipice, and if they didn't pivot, their economy and town would fall. Cue Tom Patterson, a man with a plan. Or should I say playbill. Stratford faced a major problem. Before their eyes, the rail industry and jobs disappeared from town. The people of Stratford recognized the difficult position they were in, and venturing into many different industries were discussed, but nothing seemed to fit. Tom Patterson suggested that the town look into investing in theater. After all, the town, schools, and streets were named after Shakespeare's hometown and characters from his plays. Many in town thought that this was a pretty wild idea. I don't know the exact details of how he convinced people to go along with this idea, but eventually the town council actually gave Tom some money to go to New York to investigate the idea of developing theater in Stratford. While he was in New York, Tom met with Sir Laurence Olivier. Unfortunately, he was not interested in helping out with the project. Eventually, Tom connected with a major theater director in England named Tyrone Guthrie, who was open to the idea. Guthrie, as a condition of joining the project, wanted to design the theater and the stage himself. Stratford was happy to oblige, and so work got underway to build Stratford's first stage. The first few seasons went really well, even though they were held under tents because their funds were so limited. However, after a few years, they had enough resources to build a permanent theater, and the rest, as they say, is history. Thanks to the growth of the theater scene, the economy of Stratford grew. Bed and breakfasts, restaurants, and shops flourished with the festival season. Today, Stratford is home to several world-class theaters and attracts over 1 million theater guests each year. It's estimated that the Stratford Festival generates about $135 million annually for the community. As a thriving town that's seen its ups and downs, Stratford is a great case study for how communities can pivot and embrace new industries as the economy changes over time. And so that brings me back to these maps. Stratford is just another dot on this map, but in reality, it's so much more than that. These pages are full of maps and other little dots, and these little dots represent great stories that I intend to discover for myself. So, I don't always know where I'll be next, but I do know that I'll be out there exploring, and I invite you to join me. So hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.